Hi there, I'm planning to put some video lectures online about biotech and quantum computing, but before that I want to make a test video talking about something else, and I thought about some ideas I read in the latest book of Clayton Christensen, The Prosperity Paradox, which unfortunately is the last year he passed away, I think due to cancer, so it's probably definitely the last book. And if you never heard, Christensen is an Harvard Business School guru, so he's the guy who introduced the concept of disruptive startup innovation, other buzz expressions that right now all the new entrepreneurs are using. This is not a text about like how can be or why you should be the next Uber, or create the next Google Man. It's more about it's about something different. In fact, as a co-author, there is Ofosa Ojomo, which is a Nigerian-born researcher at the Harvard Business School, which is working on topics related to innovation, corruption, and development. So in this text, the authors join a critique about the general trends for country development. And you know that there are some economists like Easterly and Bisamoyo who say that development is and humanitarian projects will never work and they're actually detrimental, so they have a very pessimistic view on these things. And on the other side, there are also overly optimistic people like Jeffrey Sachs that they believe in aid, they will throw money and something will come. Obviously, there is something in between, like Esther Duflo and Banshiri, that they are explain more scientifically that poverty is a complicated topic and it's not just aid or complaining about aid, but it's more social, psychological situations that with many issues. So it's not just as simple as it is, but as these two groups claim. So the point of this text is quite different. It's abstracting from all these views or one side, aid, non-aid, political issues or whatever. And I think it should be actually addressed to anyone who is working in development or anyone who is working in general trying to do something. It's I recommend to everybody. So in fact, the main idea that is at the beginning that summarizes everything is like enduring prosperity for many countries will not come from fixing poverty. It will come from investing in innovations that create new markets within the countries. The main idea is that the regional wealth comes from innovations, therefore startups. And so forget about foreign aid, political brainwashing, foreign Samaritans, charity, humanitarian, blah blah blah. Wealth is created by companies like startups that are pushing innovation. It's true that 90% of startups will fail, but those who will succeed will bring wealth in their own country. So no aid, no fight for corruption directly, no brainwashing, no political BS. The prosperity is, the main idea is that it's built from companies, substantially. Obviously, assuming that there is ethical, that there is all the other things, not that just, but the main idea is that innovation, business driven is what is the path for prosperity. But starting from the beginning, like, what is prosperity? So generally it's measured with something like the GDP, but it's generally more loosely associated with the citizen perception of happiness and well-being, like prosperity as a process in which more and more people in a specific region improve their economic, social and political well-being. Yes, I say political well-being because in the end political is kind of a result of innovation. And there are historical examples that they are described in the text. They are deeply follow this, explain this concept. For example, Ford in the US or Samsung, what it was for South Korea. So obviously innovation, regardless of circumstances, is possible. When I say possible, means that circumstances sometimes include endemic corruption, lack of infrastructure, and in this case, the innovator must have the patience and to endure for as long as it takes to make this social foundation to evolve in these systems. Obviously, there is some kind of a chicken egg problem, like if you have innovation is given by the infrastructure and some support by institutions, but sometimes the institutions are created to when we know that there's some kind of innovation. So there is one thing essentially is launching a startup in Silicon Valley in San Francisco Bay, where everybody is used to this kind of stuff. Another thing is launching something in the middle of nowhere in the Sahara Desert, where nobody expecting it, and also the local governments. It's not necessarily they don't care about, but they never thought about creating a situation. So infrastructure is obviously what is underlying or supporting everything. So physical and digital are what is the entrepreneur should invest on if you want to exist. Someone mentioned the story of Indomie, which it's not Indomie, but something like that. It's an Indonesian food chain that had tremendous positive impact in Nigeria, so from Indonesia to Nigeria. So if you want to save the world, forget about UNICEF, United Nations and so on, blah, 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 just make instant noodles. Because what happened is that they were selling extremely cheap, it was like $1, so that everybody can afford it, and of course it was a good business for them. So that the two things were like win-win from both sides. What was the problem? That sourcing, manufacturing, distributing, and selling Indomie broad noodles required an investment in many logistic and institution aspects, like creating a complete retail network, developing a specialized training, acquire electricity generator. So some of the infrastructure where they had literally to build electrical power plant, electrical system, and even sewage treatment. We got treatment plants. And all this happened in Lekki, which is like in a city in Nigeria near the Lagos region. And it's clear that they made it for their own financial interest, because otherwise if they didn't build all these infrastructures, they would have never been able to sell millions of Indomie, and they would have been able only to sell few hundreds. But in this process they created many infrastructure that they were helpful for them and also for the local community. And so something that the local governments never did it. So it was literally the entrepreneur group to overcome his own barriers, make all this kind of investment at this level. But this was maybe a very complicated situation that they managed to do it. Another story that is mentioned in this book, I really like it, is going back to the example of South Korea and Samsung. So that in the 90s, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in Asia, actually one of the poorest countries in the world. And today is one of the wealthiest in the world, or at least depending which index you are looking, is the most innovative in the world. And also is the one with the lowest rate of child mortality. So it's in 60-70 years they changed completely the history. And this happened thanks to the original pioneer co-founder of Samsung, Lee Byung-chul. I hope I'm pronouncing properly, otherwise I'm sorry, I apologize for that. So the idea that led this company growth, and what happened is in the 60s, there was this an authoritarian leader, Park Chung-hee, who was ruling Korea, and the founder of Samsung kind of managed to network and lobby to have a series of tax breaks for the company and further support that they made. So it was one of these rare cases that there was no infrastructure, no really institution supporting it, but they managed to grow together. It was like the chicken and the egg coming up at the same time. Obviously, it's an exceptional case, but it's good to take it as an example and was maybe probably to follow the rules in your own country. And what happened is that Samsung, as an initial company focused on sugar and flour, expanded rapidly and diversified its business in many things. So you probably know the mobile phone, but trust they have a lot of things. They have all sorts of things, and also what happened is that all this innovation that they created managed to increase a lot all the exportations in the country. So literally, what this company is completely intertwined with the local economy in Korea, and nobody can say that they were not responsible to improving overall the financial situation in the country. And this would have never happened if they never receive tax breaks and cheap loan, bank loan, reduced export interest rates, and allocation of foreign materials. All things that they come from the point of view of the government and financial things. So what is the lesson was that it's true that Samsung guided a lot of innovation, but the key was very in the political support that they kind of lobbying connected and created. Of course, it's not something easy that you talk with your government, your president, but that's the way. You have to find a way of networking with these things. There is no other way, and don't expect that they will create automatically the institutions for you. That's already has already happened for some other purpose. It's not going to happen. And another thing that goes back to other people like Dambisa Mojo is the concept of corruption. That corruption not necessarily is a problem. Actually, they make the extreme. There's extreme chapter statement that they say corruption is not the solution. The problem is the solution. In the sense of obviously corruption is bad. But what has been observed statistically is that developing natures are often vilified, attacked because criticized the corruption, blah 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 blah, as if citizens they deserve or they are happy with this kind of situations. Instead, what they observe is that development often is preceded by successful corruption situations that then obviously are followed by anti-corruption program. So in the sense that corruption, anyway, if there is some kind of development, some kind of pushing on another level, it's inevitable that corruption is happening. Then, it's a sign actually of development. If there is running money, then when it's pathological that is stopping the development, it's another story. Or when it's anti-meritocratic, or when it's not just the beginning, it's a problem. But you cannot not think that corruption at the beginning when something is starting up is completely bad. It might be a sign of development. My three take-home messages that I got from this book is that wealth is driven by innovation, which means startups, even if most of them will fail, but those that will not will create wealth. And the second one, other point is that infrastructure and law make the difference. So if the policy makers should create already something, a plan that in the future something will happen, they will not expect that naturally their current law will be enough to satisfy the future generation of innovators. And also at the same time, if someone innovators is experienced that there are not good infrastructure, not good laws for his ideas, he should think about and endure and find solution for everything. As I mentioned, Indomie, they created their own electrical power plant and sewage and whatever, all the other system in Nigeria for succeeding. I really like this text because was more focused on the idea that innovation, business driven is what we need, and not all this. We don't need to start thinking all this complicated process how to address poverty, how to address directly corruption. So I really like it. And there is an interesting, I think was not even in the text, was like in the comments in the end, where Christensen is making the observation because he's focused on Korea because I think he spent his adolescence or childhood there. So that he left this country which was very poor, and now Korea is, like as I said, one of the top country in the world. But at the same time, he's mentioning that there's been an increase also of suicide for people keeping up these new lifestyles, and he's mentioning that in our obsession for this prosperity, we should not forget what are the real values. Like, it's not that you need to have a perfect country where economy and overall social indicators or dissatisfaction are very high, but we are completely isolated and obsessed by obsessed by success. So at the point that suicide increases so dramatically. It was nice talking to you. See you next time.